Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into Mark Batterson's Do It for a Day. It's a book all about this one really powerful idea, that massive, life-altering results, they don't come from huge, sweeping actions. Nope, they come from the tiny little changes we commit to every single day.
So the book kicks right off with this core concept. The idea is that your future isn't some big, unknowable mystery out there. It's actually being built right now, in the small, what might seem like insignificant things you do over and over again. It's really about that daily grind, pointed in the same direction.
And to really get your head around this, Batterson uses this incredible real-world example from physics that honestly sounds almost unbelievable. It all has to do with a domino chain reaction.
I mean, that sounds completely impossible, right? A little 2-inch domino? But the author points to the work of a physicist, Lorne Whitehead, who figured out that a single domino actually has enough power to knock over another domino that's 1.5 times its size.
And this is where the math just gets mind-blowing. If you follow that exponential growth, by the time you get to the 23rd domino in that chain, it would be big enough and powerful enough to actually bring down the Eiffel Tower. That right there is the power of small compounding actions. So this principle, this idea of exponential growth, is what the author calls a domino habit. It's that one small, totally manageable habit that, when you tip it over, starts this chain reaction that builds and builds into something enormous over time.
And you know, this isn't some brand new idea. The father of American psychology, William James, he was saying this over a century ago. We are all creatures of habit. And those habits, whether we like it or not, are either carrying us toward where we want to go or pulling us away from it.
Okay, so how does this whole process actually get wired into our brains? Because if we really want to change our habits, we first have to understand the machinery in our heads that, keeps them running on autopilot.
Deep inside your brain, there's this little cluster of cells called the basal ganglia. You can basically think of this as the command center for your habits. It's where your brain stores all these recurring patterns and actions, so your conscious mind is freed up to think about other stuff.
So what this means is that if we want to create a good habit or, break a bad one, we don't fight our brain, we have to work with it. And that means hacking this really simple 3-step loop that just runs on repeat in our basal ganglia. The cycle is actually pretty simple. First, you've got a prompt, or a cue, that kicks the whole thing off. That trigger then leads to step 2, the pattern, which is the habit or behavior itself. And then finally, you get the prize, a reward that basically tells your brain, hey, do that again. That was worth it.
And to see just how incredibly powerful this cycle is when someone engineers it on purpose, you don't have to look any further than the history of toothpaste. Get this. About 100 years ago, only 7% of Americans brushed their teeth. Then an advertising pioneer named Claude Hopkins came along and changed everything with a campaign for Pepsi.
Hopkins was, well, a genius. He created a prompt by making people notice the film on their teeth. Then he gave them a pattern, brush with Pepsodent. But the real key, the absolute masterstroke, was the prize. Pepsodent had ingredients like citric acid and mint oil, which created this cool, tingly sensation. People started to crave that feeling, and that tingle became the reward that cemented the habit for an entire nation.
So hacking the habit cycle is an amazing tool. But according to the book, it's pretty much useless if you don't have the secret ingredient that makes any change possible in the first place: having the right mindset.
The author pulls from researcher Carol Dweck's work, which breaks it down into 2 basic mindsets. Someone with a fixed mindset, they believe their talents are just set in stone. So for them, failure isn't a lesson, it's a final verdict. But someone with a growth mindset, they believe their abilities can be developed. For them, failure is just data. It's an opportunity.
And that right there is the heart of the growth mindset. It's not about just bouncing back from failure. It's about actually using it. You own it, you learn from it, and you get stronger because of it. Success isn't about avoiding failure, it's about managing it well.
A growth mindset lets you become what the book calls a choice architect. So instead of just gritting your teeth and relying on willpower, which we all know runs out, you actively start designing your world to make the good choices the easy choices.
There's a fantastic example of this on a dangerous curve on Chicago's Lakeshore Drive. For years, accidents were a huge problem, no matter how many warning signs they put up. So they tried something totally different. Instead of telling drivers to slow down, they changed the environment. They painted a bunch of horizontal lines on the road leading into the curve.
As drivers got closer to the curve, the lines got closer together, creating this optical illusion that they were speeding up. And what did drivers do? They naturally, subconsciously tapped their brakes. The result was that number, a massive 36% drop in accidents without a single sign. That is choice architecture in action.
So let's put it all together. We have the physics of dominoes and exponential growth, we've got the neuroscience of the habit loop in our brains, and we have the psychological power that comes with having the right mindset. It really all boils down to one simple question.
And this leads us right back to the book's central promise. You are capable of so much more than you probably think. Your biggest goals, they aren't out of reach. They're just sitting at the end of a very long chain of daily habits.
So it all comes down to this. What is the one small 2-inch domino that you can knock over today? What is that single, totally manageable habit that, if you just do it for a day, will start that incredible chain reaction toward the future you really want to create?